Optimal health for high performers. This is the Health Upgrade Podcast with Dr. Nawaz Habib.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Health Upgrade Podcast. This is Dr. Habib. I'm really excited about today's conversation with the great Zora Benhamou. How are you?
Good. I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
JP sends his apologies. He is sick, so unfortunately not able to join us on our recording today. That said, I think he's going to appreciate this conversation, and we'll have you on again, and we'll get into more questions down the road. But I want to first get to tell everybody who you are and let our audience know a little bit about you, how you became a gerontologist, your entire kind of journey that led you into starting your podcast, getting out into the world the way that you have. Let's start at the beginning. What got you interested in health and gerontology to begin with?
Oh, this is a long story, so I will try to keep it short. The short version. Well, the interest in health. I'm born in LA. I think it's in your LA DNA to be always interested in health and wellness. But I did become a lot more concerned when my mother died of breast cancer when she was only 57. So I was okay, I just don't want to look good in a bikini anymore. I want to just not die early. So for many, many years, I was only 23 at the time. So I've been interested in health and wellness, but I got into the gerontology field. And gerontology, just so people understand what this is, because it's not a geriatric physician. So people think I'm Dr. Zora. I'm not a doctor. Gerontologist is somebody who studies aging and longevity, but we not only look at the biological perspective, but the psychological and the sociological perspective as well. Of course, we advocate for older adults, but we have to look at the whole life course from birth to death to understand why we get diseases and how this happens and how to slow down aging if we can, or live our best years and have a longer health span, because we know what a lifespan is and we're pretty good at creating a long lifespan with modern medicine. But our health span, which is the number of years we live free of disease or lower disease and full of vitality, is quite short. It's around 50 years old, and we start taking medication and then have to go to the doctor and have diseases and things. So we want to extend that. We want to make health span really, really long, and that's my interest. And I fell into the biohacking community before my interest in gerontology, and I was like, I want a biohacking degree. That sounds so cool, but that doesn't exist. So I've been following Dr. Walter Longo for many years, and he's very famous for the fasting mimicking diet and caloric restriction and all that. And I loved his work, and I found out he was teaching at USC, University of Southern California. And then I was dove into that. And then I realized that there's this whole gerontology degree, which was amazing. It was definitely my interest. And it wasn't just nutrition or just saying, a lot of people, actually, Dr. Walter Longo had a very interesting degree that he was also teaching. It was called nutrition, health span, and longevity. I was like, that's got my name written all over it. But it was really focused on nutrition. And I know that aging is a lot more than, or at least we want to live a long, healthy life. It's much more than just nutrition. So I went into gerontology, very happy with that degree. And one of the best classes that I think you'll be very, very happy to hear, one of my favorite, was the mind-body connection. And I saw that on the curriculum, and I was like, no way, this is a research-based university. I thought that was kind of woo. And this was the best class I'd ever taken. And I'm just really, really grateful I did, because now I can teach a lot of things that a lot of people need to hear, and if they want to have a long, healthy life.
I love that it's this holistic perspective, right? We're not simply focused on the nutrition piece. The biochemistry matters. There's no question about it. It does. But if we just focus on the biochemistry and we don't understand the psychological components, we don't understand the other sides of these very important contributing factors to creating health span. I love that it's a very holistic approach. I love that we're able to literally just look at many different aspects. It almost comes to this idea of the blue zones. And I'm sure you're aware of the blue zones, Dan Buettner, all of the work that he's done through National Geographic, but identifying those important components. There wasn't a single diet that all of the blue zones all followed. There were certain common impactful things, but they were definitely environment specific. But in addition, community played a massive role, right? What were you doing? How often were you moving? So physical components played a huge role. Did that have any play? Did that have any role in your interest? Because biohacking and health span and gerontology seem like they're almost two sides of the same coin. Was there any draw through kind of the blue zones concepts that drew you into this?
Definitely. I heard about the blue zones long before I did the gerontology degree, and that was through the biohacking community. And then when I did the program, actually, they did cover the blue zones. So that was a common thread. But when I was studying, I was telling my professors, oh, there's this whole biohacking thing. And they were like, what's that? What's biohacking? And then my biohacking friends, they did, what's gerontology? I don't understand. I was like, you guys should be talking to each other. Like, really, this is what I'm trying to do is connect these two communities, or at least the information that I've learned from both of them. And then now I'm in the menopause space, so I'm applying this as well to women who need help getting through this transition.
And it's so interesting because for me, the functional medicine community, I've always kind of called clinical biohacking with a scientific background. So we're all trying to get to the same place. We're all trying to optimize cellular and mental and mitochondrial function. We're all trying to extend health span as long as possible. We're trying to extend lifespan to some extent as long as possible. And with all of that, we're trying to improve our productivity, our ability to be present in the life that we do have, and to create positive change in the world. And it's so interesting. We can label it in whatever way. It's just the lens through which you see that same target of wanting
Yeah.
to get us towards a healthier, longer, happier life, right? And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think we all want similar things, and people kind of distort the biohacking community, and they'll say, "Oh, these people just want to live forever." I'm like, no, no. I mean, maybe there are, but I think everyone has their own definition of what that means to live a long life or live a good life, and so people, I have to sometimes clear the air with the whole biohacking thing because people think it's just gadgets and data and who cares, and we want to cut to the chase and hack the system. And there's a whole biohacking pyramid that I always explain that the foundation is very holistic. It's very the things that we pretty much know already.
I love that. And you're absolutely right on track there. And I want to get into your personal journey with this and kind of what obviously your mother's story, the kind of the challenge of seeing her pass and her health not being where ideally would be, and you then deciding that you were going to do something different. Tell us about your journey then. What were those next steps? What were those pieces to the puzzle that you started to see you needed to start to do for yourself?
Yeah. So I didn't have a pain to purpose story until very recently, which we'll get into later. But I was, again, just from LA, interested in health and feeling my best and looking my best. And then when my mother passed away, just not dying early. So I dove into books about cancer and what can I do to avoid this or lower my risk, et cetera, et cetera. So that's led me to actually have a pretty good, active, healthy life because I was afraid. Didn't want to die early. And so that's propelled me into the nutrition side and eventually the stress and the all the other pieces that we know that we need to do. It's been a journey. And I was health coaching and I started my business there. And then I started the podcast, and it was actually during COVID where my son, he said, "Mom, why don't you do a podcast?" And I said, "Well, we'll just play around with it. We'll see what happens." And actually there was a demand. And I started out with a podcast just for women over 50. That was my focus on females and an older woman and the biohacking piece, because our needs are different than a man who's in his 30s who's biohacking, right? So I brought that piece, but it was actually my audience who then asked me for guests on menopause, on hormones, and to help them with transition. So that's how I kind of transitioned into the menopause side. But I've always kept my gerontology hat on because I not only want to help a woman feel better during this transition and suppress these symptoms, but I want her to think about her 80-year-old self. I want her to consider what life can be like. And we have a menu of choice in terms of how we age, and unless you're hit by a truck or you're suddenly struck with a rare disease and we don't have as much control, but we still can do our best to live our best life. But if we're taking care of ourselves to try to feel better during menopause, there are some extra things that we can do in order to protect our 80-year-old self. And that's sort of how we differentiate from other menopause perhaps information.
Absolutely. I think the female journey is so different than what has been studied for a very long time, which has been primarily women are small men, which quote unquote, obviously that's not a real thing. And Dr. Stacey Sims is pretty much out there screaming this from the mountaintops that there is a huge difference between the journey that females go through and that males go through. And we need to start being a little bit more conscious, a little bit more studious when it comes to understanding what those differences are and how to support female health long term, not just male health, and extrapolate that information out. So I'm glad to hear that that's happening on your side as well. Let's talk about your personal journey, because there were some moments of pain, of challenge, of physical breakdown that we could kind of lean into. So tell us a little bit about what those moments were for you.
Yeah. So I would say it was probably in my mid to late 40s where I started to have hip pain. And knowing now what I know, if I knew back then what I know now, when I'm thinking of a woman in perimenopause, I didn't know what the word perimenopause was at the time. And I'm 55 now. So I thought, oh, I don't know what this is. I must have injured myself, and I'm very active, so very possible. But I would have thought first thing, oh, you're losing your hormones. Maybe we should go and start our menopause journey here and start learning more about it. But I didn't know. So if anyone who's got joint pain, who's in this time of life, look at your hormones and see where you're at. But for me, I did have injuries throughout my life because I was an active person. I had a ski accident when I was in my 20s. I was doing a deadlift and I heard a snap in my hip. I didn't know what it was. And so it kind of made sense. And I didn't realize at the time, I was told I have hip impingement. And this is when you got a wonky bone. It's just not quite fitting in there. And I asked, why am I like this? Doctor said, you're born with this weird bone. It's just, you're lucky you got to where you're at already without problems, probably because you have really good muscle mass. And so that's why I keep encouraging my kids, God, please, just build muscle right now. It'll save you later on. And I'm here doing all the right things. I'm eating my protein and trying to have a good diet and sleep and stress and take care of myself. And not only the mental stress, but the physical stress. I was like, okay, I have a pain here. Let's, go look at it. And so over the years, I was in the biohacking community. I said, oh, well, there's something called hyaluronic acid, or there's platelet-rich plasma injections. So I'd always find these really cool hacks to just bounce right back. And on top of it, physical therapy obviously helped me very, very much too. So doing that work as well. So there were a lot of things. I would say probably I've got a list of about 100 or so things that I've tried throughout this journey to relieve pain and to feel better. And these were working. They would get me going for a good year or two until they didn't anymore. These weren't working. The things that used to work were not working anymore. And I had a decline about a year and a half of just trying out of desperation, and the pain would get worse and worse. And my range of motion got smaller and smaller. And so what was happening was I had osteoarthritis, which is different than osteoporosis, because people say, oh, osteoporosis. I say, no, the difference is a big difference. My bones are actually very strong. Osteoporosis is a lack of bone density. Okay. And that's when you're more likely to have a fracture. So I've fallen many times in my life and there's no fracture. So, my bone density shows up pretty good. But osteoarthritis is a joint issue. This is where you start to lose cartilage in your joints. And that's why you have these pain, and you have stiffness and pain and just less range of motion. I couldn't get on a bike. I couldn't get in a car. It was hard to walk. I got to a point where I was walking like a turtle. And there came a point and I said, look, I think I need to get a surgery. And I was avoiding surgery like the plague. I did not want a surgery. So anyone who has to have a surgery is told you need major hip surgery, total hip replacement. I believe them when they say, I will do everything possible to not, I will clean my diet and I will exercise and who wants this invasive surgery? There are risks to that. So I was running away from that, and I got away for many years until I couldn't anymore. And then you succumb to it, and I just changed the chip. And I said, I'm going to be bionic. So I had to, instead of feeling sorry for myself, I had to change my mindset. And I think people who do go into surgery, it's very helpful to make that switch, because you're giving your body to somebody to cut open, and they have their life in your hands. I think is a time you need to surrender. So there's a lot of things I did in preparation for this hip operation. And I don't know if it helps if you want me to give you a little bit of some statistics on osteoarthritis.
I would love it. Osteoarthritis is a huge, huge burden on society. We know this now. I'm a chiropractor by profession. So like dealing with joints is something that I have done for a decade. And I know what it means to have flexibility issues and mobility challenges, and then the pain that accompanies it, and the challenge of not being able to stand and walk and move the way that you used to, and your body physically feeling like it's breaking down. I'd love to hear these stats on the osteoarthritis piece.
So yeah, the stats are interesting, and the risk factors are also very interesting, because I've had plenty of people come to me like who know me and they go, I can't believe this has happened to you. This is very highly unusual for somebody in their 50s and somebody like you who's quote unquote doing all the right things. And so I want people to feel like if they do have this and if they're feeling really alone like I did, because when you look online, osteoarthritis, and you're looking for relief or tips, the biggest tip is to lose weight. That wasn't my problem. And yes, there are people, and that's part of the problem. I mean, osteoarthritis is getting more and more prevalent, and that's partly due to the aging population that's also getting heavier, right? And you have all this weight on the joints, and that's just not helping. But I couldn't find anything where I just felt really alone. So I want women who are listening, or men who are athletic and they think, how is this happening to me? And I'm eating right and taking care of my health. It can happen. And I'm going to tell you some of the risk factors. But osteoarthritis is more common in women than men. It does happen to men. It's more common in the knees. I had the hips, but the knees, hips, hands, and the spine, I think, are the most common places of osteoarthritis. And anywhere you have a joint, it can happen. And it is a degenerative joint disease. I hate that word. I mean, I tried changing my mindset. I've tried changing pain pathways and belief systems. I went to the whole Joe Dispenza thing, like working within, because I tried all the outside stuff. And there are people, I still believe that the body can heal itself. I think there are many things. If we can set that system right. If I had more time and if I had more money, I would have definitely kept going and tried my hacks. But it got to a point where the quality of life was so bad. There were more benefits than risks to getting a surgery. But I do believe that. So maybe if you catch this early enough, and there are things, and I think medicine is advancing so quickly that we will get to a point where we can regenerate these tissues. And in the sense that where it's more, because you can regenerate tissue, but where it be more prevalent, where more people are getting the benefits of that. And there are over 500 million people in the world who are affected by osteoarthritis, and that's almost 7% of the global population. It's a lot. And I interviewed one of the leading researchers on osteoarthritis, and he says that number is small. He goes, it's actually a lot. It is higher than that, because also people don't often report it either. So
I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we were talking like between 10 and 20% of the population is suffering from this currently, and we just don't have that data to prove it. But it wouldn't surprise me based on the people that I was working with hands-on as a chiropractor. So I get that.
Yeah, you're seeing a lot of these people for sure.
On the point of being able to regenerate tissues, I think we're honestly, and as you said, we are way closer than people realize. Like we're getting really, really close to technologies and tools and therapeutics getting to a point where that regeneration is actually far more possible within our lifespan than we realized.
Yeah, I hope I'm one of the last people who've had total hip surgeries, because it's so primitive to cut off a bone and then stick a piece of metal in there. And if you ever watch these videos, they're like banging it and it's sawing it. It's just like, why are we still doing this? Why can't we get more advanced? So I think you're right. We're on the cusp, and hopefully I'm one of the last people to get these types of surgeries.
It's interesting you say that. I've watched orthopedic surgery, and it is like I've been in the room. It is brutal. It is incredibly physically demanding on the doctor, and it's brutal on the patient. Just watching it happen there's something else going on there for sure, and it doesn't look fun. I'm sure we're getting to a point where we're nearing the end of that. You're right. It's a very primitive thing.
It's very primitive. And yeah, so we'll hopefully move on sooner than later. And in the US, I don't know, the latest stat I had was there are about 400,000 surgeries each year in the US for osteoarthritis. And so globally, it's, I don't know, hundreds of millions probably. But there are a lot of people getting this surgery. And the risk factors, if people are out there wondering, I don't know, maybe not, I don't know. But the risk factors, there are 12 of them, more or less, I think. And I had 9. I mean, I was set up for this without even realizing it. And some of the risk factors are age. Well, age, is a risk factor for all diseases of aging, by the way. So not much we can do about that. The other thing is gender. Being a woman, you're more at risk for this as well. And when you're going through menopause and you lose your hormones, boom, there's another risk. And I felt that as I was losing my hormones, even though I was in hormone replacement therapy, I had quite baby dosages in the very beginning because I didn't know what I was doing. Doctor I didn't have major symptoms. I think that was a little bit of a mistake, but I saw myself progressively get worse very quickly in the middle of that transition. So hormone loss is a big deal. Genes, I had the genes that were, I think it was, there were like 4 of them or more or less that my regenerative medicine doctor kind of pointed out. And she's like, you got these genes, which are generally pretty good for certain diseases and certain things. But when it comes to inflammation, they're not working for you. They're actually adding fuel to the fire. So genetically, I was set up for this. Joint injury, I was athletic. I've had a torn ACL. I've had a hip injury. I'm just like, there's a lot of things that could have been contributing to this. And then there are congenital hip disorders like hip dysplasia and then the impingement, which I had as well. And I am hyper flexible. I don't know if you deal with hyper flexible people, right?
Yes.
And you could just put my leg around behind my head and on my arm. And I thought it was really cool because I didn't have to work for this. I was just born and I'd go to a yoga class without even trying, without realizing this is probably not a good thing, right?
Yeah. Hyperflexibility when you're young is not so bad, but when you're older, it can be an issue. And there are some conditions that are directly linked. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is very much far more prevalent than people realize. And there are genetic predispositions to creating that hyperflexibility, that your collagen is slightly different and it's just far less tensile. And there are different types. So there's genetic versions and non-genetic versions. And if it is Ehlers-Danlos, great. If not, great. Those are the cards you were dealt. So let's figure out where those underlying pieces are that are modifiable, because we can't change our genes, but we can change what the epigenetics are around those genes. And so a lot of these risk factors that you're mentioning, obviously age, gender, not things you can change. But what are those modifiable risk factors that we can change?
Yes. So there are some things, well, if you have an injury, we can't change. You can be injury adverse and try to avoid injury, which is always a good thing. The other thing is being athletic, getting into sports, but that's a good thing, right? So it does set you up for probably injuries. And then if you have all these other risk factors, it's a possible thing. If you do have so I've had all of these things except, there's one other thing that possibly I had, but I don't really know. It was nutritional deficiencies, like with vitamin C and vitamin D in particular. It's possible, but I wasn't quite measuring my vitamin C. My vitamin D was always up and down, but maybe it wasn't high enough for protection. But I had all these other risk factors. But there you go. You can control that.
Exactly. And so at least on the nutritional side, you knew that there were certain risk factors that were potentially playing a role, and vitamin C, vitamin D, obviously heavily involved in the inflammatory process and supporting or reducing inflammation when they are in good levels. And this factor of inflammation, I think, is an important one that people need to understand, that the breakdown that occurs triggers an inflammatory reaction, and that's truly what creates the pain. It is the bone-on-bone rubbing physical interaction that triggers this inflammatory reaction internally. Obviously, that's less than optimal to experience, but it's not just about reducing the inflammation. The inflammation is telling you something is wrong. It's trying to help correct the issue that is going on. So it's really about understanding the root cause of why the cartilage is breaking down, why the fluid within that synovial joint has broken down or has decreased, and how can we support the repair of that. And inflammation is not a bad thing in those scenarios. It's just incredibly uncomfortable to experience. So inflammatory control is a big piece to the puzzle. Talk a little bit about your experience in creating a journey or a protocol that started to work for you. First off, I love that you talked mindset, because understanding that it was time to become bionic version of you is huge. And saying like, listen, for me to function optimally, for this not to be taking over my entire life, allowing that support from an external standpoint actually will benefit me in the long term. Talk a little bit about kind of the mindset piece there.
Oh, well, the mindset is huge. Before I do, there's three other modifiable risk factors that I think
Sorry,
are
go
really
for it. Yeah.
important that people can and should pay attention to. And I've mentioned obesity, right? That is having more weight. Occupations. If you can't change your job, if you're lifting heavy things all the time, day in and day out, and you feel like you have some of these other risk factors, it's probably a good idea to change. And the last one is smoking. Again, another major modifiable, like the obesity and smoking are like the two most modifiable risk factors for all diseases of aging. Like it's such a low hanging fruit that I know it's not easy for everybody, but it is so impactful in terms of your health. So if you can get those under control, those are really, really important. But the mindset piece is important. And I think, I've always tried to avoid surgery because I wasn't in the mindset. I felt that if I was forced to go in or if I didn't feel ready, I always felt that I was going to go into that surgery with resistance. Maybe I wouldn't have the outcome I'm looking for. So a lot of people who've done hip surgeries, think, oh, I wish I did it earlier. It changed my life. And yes, it is life changing. But I don't think I could say that. I don't think I'm the kind of person that just needed to do all these things and try my best before I actually went in there. But when I decided, and that's for me very often with health decisions, like I'm on the fence, should I, shouldn't I just make that decision. I don't look back. I stop reading all the horror stories that can happen with a surgery or with whatever choice that I make. And I just look at the good stuff, because that is so important, I think, to your recovery and to your healing. And when I got the surgery, I remember being in the operating room, and right before they were going to put me out, I looked at everybody around the room and I said, I'm not sure if I'm going to see you on the other side. There's a lot of people here, but I just want to say thank you. And thank you for taking the best care of me. And I did that partly for myself, because I just felt like I needed to say something, and partly for them, because doctors and surgeons and nurses, they have busy lives and they're going through divorces and got kids who are screaming and like all the same stuff that we go through. And everybody looked around and said, and there was at least a smile, and it changed the atmosphere a little bit of that operating room, because when you're on that table that looks like a Frankenstein table, it's impressive. It's really impressive. So it's nice to set the tone. And that for me was part of my mindset, is just, let's do this.
I love that. We're a lot of people, especially as the healthcare system kind of is going in the direction that it is, we really do crap on the people that are doing the hard work of creating healthcare in its current form. And I think we need to be much more conscious and much more positive in realizing that it's not them personally that are maybe seeing things in the way that we're not aligned in our vision, but they're not doing it out of like literally wanting to cause problems or pain or chronic disease. That's not the intent. We need to show people that we are grateful for the work that they're doing. And like surgeons have done amazing work to extend our lifespans out, right? Orthopedic, neurological, cardiovascular surgeons, like people are alive now because the healthcare system has learned to do certain things in such profound and amazing ways. So I love that you did that, because yes, it's beneficial for you because you got something off your chest, something that was heavy and weighing, and this concern of I'm going under the knife and who knows what's going to happen. But at the same time, they're human and they need to hear that. And I love that you were able to kind of take that moment and put it out there. And it sounds like the results were pretty positive because you went in and you've come out with a much better functioning hip, it looks like.
Yes, hip surgeries are, thank goodness, very successful. It's quite a simple, I mean, we talk about it was primitive, but it's a simple surgery, they say. I mean, I certainly did not do it, but if they tell me, and actually with robotics now, it's quite amazing and very accurate. So I think it definitely, I also was very well prepared because thank goodness to my guests and people like you come on my show, I had an amazing protocol put together for me, a peri-operative protocol. I call it the Wolverine Protocol to help me heal as fast as I possibly could because not only did I have one hip surgery, but 12 weeks later, I had another one. And I was only allowed to take that other one if I was able to heal fast. And I did. And I certainly did not want to have one leg done and not the other. It is chronic pain that you do not want to live with. So I'm happy to share that because I was really well prepared.
I love this idea of the Wolverine Protocol. It's a cool name, like Wolverine, regeneration, phenomenal. When I was working with patients hands-on, one-on-one as a chiro, I loved doing prehab. This is rehab before. And this entire concept was the stronger you go into your procedure, your surgery, whatever it is, the quicker you're going to come out. And I like peri therapy or peri surgery and kind of the name that you provided there. But prehab for me was this thing that I was very focused on. We did prehab and then we did rehab. And because we did the rehab was way faster and it was much more effective. So pushing initially and getting your body prepared to go in strong gets your body out strong. But I would love to dig into your Wolverine protocol with you. Let's talk about this protocol that you've created, the Wolverine protocol, and what's included within that.
Oh, it's a long list of things, and I won't go into all of them. And I have a whole PDF if people want to download that because it could be a whole 2-hour podcast because there was so much. And I'm one of these people, I want to try it all, but you don't have to try everything. But there are some key elements that I think are really necessary. And part of it is, like you said, you go into that surgery with the best muscle mass of your life. And I don't care if it's an arm, a leg, an ankle, it's really important because you need to, if you want, I mean, if you don't care about rehabbing fast and like do whatever you want, but it's your life. But if you want to come out there quickly and strong, then you need, and I know it's so hard to do rehab or prehab when you're in pain. I get it. It is. And you see the people and the suffering on their face. And like, I can only move my leg a tiny bit, but you move the leg a tiny bit. Don't go into pain, right? It's just work within that range of motion. And you can do things. There's so much you can do. And also if you have a hip issue, well, you can work your upper body or, you can work that up as long as you want or vice versa. So there are things that we can do and it's systemic. Like the things that we do for our arm doesn't just sit in our arm, right? We get the benefits in so many other parts of our body. So I would say that's one of the key elements, but you also need to grow muscle, right? How are you going to feed it? You got to feed the muscle for it to grow. So it's not just doing these exercises. And so getting protein in there, your required amount. And I doubled my protein because I knew I was going into a surgery. And I mean, when I was in surgery, because your body is under this major stress and it needs to regenerate as quickly as possible. And if you're not giving it the nutrients that it needs, it won't heal as fast. So getting used to eating a little bit more protein while you're training in the prehab helps later on. So that's another key element.
Yeah, no question about it. I love that. In general, do you have a recommendation of the amount of protein? I'm sure we're very closely aligned on this. I generally am recommending between 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight or lean body mass as kind of where you want to be. And if you can increase, great. But that's generally where people are not quite hitting, and that's where I'm trying to get them close to.
That's exactly. I always say 1 because it's easy to calculate for me. Just 1 gram per pound. If you're 120 pounds and you like to be 120 pounds, so stick with that. If you're 150, you want to be 120, you'd go with the 120, the desired body weight. It's like, this is you're looking for body composition. But when you are getting surgery, I double it. And it's hard to eat that much protein per day, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to get just your minimal or your recommended amount that you and I recommend. So I would supplement with essential amino acids, with protein powders, trying to get just cram in a little bit, a bit more in there. And that really helped. So that's the time you can use these powders. Real food is always great, but believe me, it's especially if you're not moving as much. When I'm active and athletic, I get hungry and I can pack it in. But when you're not, you're like, oh, this is hard.
No doubt.
I'm not as hungry. So yeah.
That makes a ton of sense. And I'm glad we're very aligned on those numbers. And muscle is key here. Muscle needs to be built in order for us to be able to then rehab and prehab and build that therapeutic bounce back tool. I feel like if you want to bounce back, muscle is the key to make that happen.
Yeah, muscle is the key for so many things, but
It really is.
particularly when you're going into surgery. And getting in, and there's other supplements like creatine, there's collagen, there's urolithin A. These are kind of things that support your muscle and your strength. So that's another thing you can, if you want to take it next level, like you can get all these supplements. If you're going to cut bone like me, you want to get a good bone supplement. These are very, very simple things. The one thing actually I do want to mention that a lot of people don't know about, and this is very important if you're going to get surgery, is I was introduced to blood flow restriction bands years ago, but I happened to get a special set when I was starting to decline. And they were so easy to use and so comfortable. I was managing fine. I used them up until the day of surgery and then the day after the surgery, and I kept going. And blood flow restriction, this is where using these bands that are either on your arms or your legs, never at the same time, and they increase with air and they cause a little pressure, and it's partially restricting the blood flow into the limb. And what that happens is when it releases, you get a surge of growth hormone. This is your own growth hormone. And this is really important because growth hormone feeds the muscle, right? This is how we can either maintain muscle mass or even build it with lighter weights and less injury. So I couldn't lift heavy weights when I was told no impact, no heavy weights, don't do this, don't do that. But I could wear these bands, and I wore them while I'm cooking. I wore them while I was just doing little baby leg lifts, whatever I could. And I measured I'm a biohacker, right? I like to test, measure, and assess. And I was measuring. And in that year and a half, I actually gained just over 1% of muscle mass. I didn't lose it. And if I took pictures of me before and after, body composition is exactly the same. And I was so pleased. So yeah. Do you know about blood flow restriction?
I have some experience with it for sure. And what I love about it is it's utilizing this the concept of hormesis, right? It's creating a little bit of stress in a positive direction with the intent of teaching your body to handle that stress and how to repair from it, so that when a greater stress happens, surgery in your case, your body can learn to bounce back. It's essentially creating this resilience, this bounce back ability, and training your body to do so. And so with blood flow restriction, it's almost the same concept physiologically as like hypoxic or altitude training, hypoxia training, right? What you're doing is you're creating a moment of less blood flow, meaning less oxygen in, less carbon dioxide out. You're creating a slightly more stressful environment. They're still relatively comfortable. You're not cutting off the blood flow. You're slightly reducing it by 5 or 10%. And what you're saying is here body part function the same as you normally would, but under 90% of the blood flow that you normally have, or under 80% of the blood flow that you would normally have. You still have the tools to use it, but can you use it more efficiently? Can you create these greater efficiencies? I think that's such a cool process. Talk a little bit about those pieces to like how you utilized it. What were the specifics there?
So I was using these bands every single day. And the ones that I had would increase with air for 30 seconds, deflate for 5 seconds. But there are so many bands on the market. But because they were quite comfortable, I was using them more often. And so you could see, because I was measuring it, I could really see. And obviously you could see over time. It was something that I'd wake up in the morning, I'd go for a walk as much as the best as I could, put them on, just walked. If I went to rehab class, I just put them on my arms or my legs because I would do both at the same, not at the same time, but I would do the arms and then I would do the legs. And it's just a simple thing. And I've had other bands before where the most I could put them on were about 10 minutes because then they start to hurt. Like, okay, I don't want to do this. And what's happening is also you're tricking your body into thinking it's doing like 100 burpees when you're doing one or two, right? Or you're lifting a very heavy weight when you're not because of that restriction in the blood flow. And it's also bringing more vascularity to the blood vessels. So they're becoming more flexible. So there's a lot of research. Like you can go into PubMed and you just Google blood flow restriction and you're going to find so much research on this. This is nothing new. This has been around since the 60s and as far as I know. And so when you Google this, you'll see two camps. You'll see the rehab people because they got patients going into surgery and they're coming out and they can't do much and they want to improve their blood flow and they want to help them not lose muscle mass. And then you have the gym bros. These are guys who are like, during COVID, I can't lift heavy weights, so I want to get more gains with my baby weights. And they work. They're quite amazing. So I highly encourage people to look into it. There's, of course, different bands out there and different price ranges and everything. They all work. You just need to figure out what's in your price budget and how make a choice. So they're amazing. And especially as a gerontologist, I kept telling my professors, like, why are you guys talking about this?
That's crazy.
I can't get my 85-year-old father-in-law to go to the gym or lift a heavy weight, but he could put these bands on and he needs his muscle mass. But they didn't know what it was. And there are contraindications depending on the type of bands and all that. I understand that.
Of course, yeah.
But there are people who are perfectly qualified and able to use these.
Yeah, and I think this is where we need to start moving into this research and utilizing it in a practical sense. The surgery is not about the surgery. It's about how you go into the surgery and how you come out. The surgery is going to happen in the way that it needs to, but how your patient bounces back, their ability to bounce back means that there's less of a concern from the medical doctor's side on the effect of that surgery. Is it going to have a negative effect?
Mm-hmm.
If they go in stronger, they're going to come out stronger. And that's almost 100% of the time. So I'm all for utilizing tools like blood flow restriction to help with that, creating that resilience right off the bat.
And you can use these bands post-surgery too, of course, with
Amazing.
your doctor's approval. I gotta talk to doctor. So the day after the surgery, I didn't put it on the operated limb because
Of course.
it was a huge scar there, but I could put it on the other one. I could put my arms on and that was fine. And so when you have a surgery, you got to ask your doctor. Unfortunately, most doctors will be like, I have no idea what this is. No.
Yeah.
But if you have a progressive doctor, or if somebody who's willing to look at the research, you can pull out some research. You can explain what it is and why it's used in rehab, and ask for when can I start using these things. But I've used them right away, right after just using it on the opposite limb.
I remember one of the moments when I was in chiropractic college and I was doing some research on prehab, and one of the research studies came up and it showed that people who had a surgical procedure on one shoulder, if they worked out the other shoulder, the opposite side, they would bounce back from the surgery significantly faster than if they didn't work on the other side. And if you think about it, physiologically, there's no reason for why that would happen. But there's a very clear holistic body approach that changes, that your growth hormone is going to increase, that your mental function is going to be focused on improving something here, and your mindset is going to shift there, right? We don't have an anatomical reason for why it would work, but we have very clear holistic approach reasons for why these things work. So I love the idea of, okay, don't do it on the limb where the surgery happened, but let's do it on the other side. And let's not just train the legs when you have a hip surgery or a knee surgery happening. Let's do the full body. Let's do the shoulders. Let's do the arms. Why limit yourself to the spot that it's not working? Let's get everything working holistically better together. I love that.
Yeah. One piece, what I didn't talk about pre-surgery, and I think it's also really key here, even way before considering surgery, is the stress component and that mindset as well. Because when you live with chronic pain, your mind can go down a deep, dark hole. and feel sorry for yourself. And I'm in this horrible pain and life is just gray, black and white. It's no fun. I totally get it. So during this whole process, when I was really going down that last year and a half, I focused so much on stress management because my body's stressed, my mind's stressed. And when you're living, every step you take is going to have pain. Your nervous system is on high alert. Even though you're like, oh, I'm used to this and I'm a positive person. And like people around me are like, I can't believe this is happening to you. I'm like, yeah, well, inside, I'm in so much pain. And the nervous system knows this. I can't convince myself out of it. But I worked every day on meditation. I dove deep into the Joe Dispenza program. I was looking like everywhere to help heal myself. And I was like, I figured out, if this doesn't heal, fix me, then I will probably learn something from it. And actually, it helped me so much in terms of just getting in that meditation practice every day, calming the nervous system. And I found this incredible app called, what's it called? Curable. And that taught me pain pathways. It taught me how to change my mindset in terms of talking to my body, saying, you know what? I know you're trying to protect me. I know, but it's okay. I'm safe because the body thinks it's not safe. And you know this more than anyone. You talk about this all the time. But saying it out loud, writing it, there was all these little exercises I had to do. It really helped because when you are in this chronic pain, you wake up thinking about pain. It's the last thing you think about before you go to bed. You pray that actually today is the day that you will not have pain. So your mind is constantly thinking about it. And when you have a focus on that pain, you're like a hawk looking for it. And that only increases the pain. It makes it worse. So I learned how to change the thoughts in my head in order to lower the pain. And it works. It didn't make it go away, but it certainly made it a lot less painful.
I love how you've broken that down because you know that I talk about safety as the driving factor. And pain has been essentially in most people's minds, we equivocate pain to not being safe, right? And you've used neuroplastic approaches, you've used brain retraining, nervous system retraining practices through Joe Dispenza's work, which, by the way, is amazing.
I wish I knew about your work back then. I didn't know you. Otherwise, I would have done your programs. Geez, sorry about that. I'm like, talking about this.
That's a marketing on me situation, and we'll get there. That's down the road. I'm making a move up there.
But now I recommend you to so many people, actually. I have spoken on other people's podcasts. I'm like, you guys know a guy named Dr. David Nawaz Habib? And no. So I'm preaching for you because
I love it.
I just love what you do. So
I'm
thank you.
honored. I very much appreciate that. But what you did was you did the work. There's a huge difference. One of my favorite lines from any movie of all time is from The Matrix. And it's from Morpheus. And he walks up to Neo and he says, sooner or later, Neo, you're going to realize there's a big difference between knowing the path and walking the path. We can all know what we need to do, but the only people who will benefit are those who actually do it. And the only person who is capable of doing it is the person who puts their mind to doing it. And it's an individual choice. It's what you do behind closed doors. You're not showing it off on Instagram or TikTok, right? I'm doing my rehab today, #rehab, prehab, whatever. That's not where the change happens. The change happens and these amazing effects in your brain happen when you sit and you do it because you know you need to. And you are consistent with that practice. There is a huge difference between knowing the path and walking the path. Walking the path is what you did. So talk about some of the challenges that you came up on as you were going through that, because the pain is there, right? The issue, the experience of breaking down or your body not doing what you're asking it to do is still there. How did you stay consistent through that initial process?
That's a good question. So I remember when I first heard about meditation, for example, and the benefits, I thought, I got to do this. I did it once a year because I would hear somebody else talk about it. I did it once a year. Then finally, I do remember this was, probably about 6-7 years ago. And I I started building my Instagram audience, and I said, I'm in the beach for 6 weeks because I was a nomad back then. And I'm going to come here every day for 6 weeks, and I'm going to film the waves coming. And I called it 15 seconds just for you, because that's all we were allowed to share on Instagram at the time. And I got so much feedback from this that people loved seeing that wave and they were cheering me on. And I was like, oh, shoot. People are watching. I have to do this. So in fact, making a commitment, saying it out loud or saying it to an audience or saying it's not just to yourself. And I also was short term. It was 6 weeks. I said, okay, I did say 6 weeks. That's what I committed to. And I didn't say how long I needed to meditate. So sometimes I only had 2 minutes, but I went to the beach, took that little video, and I sat down for a minute or two. But I was consistent. And it was that consistency, that accountability that made me meditate up until today. Like, there's sometimes I don't do it because I have a very early morning flight, but I'll maybe catch up in the plane or whatever. But doing that, it's usually in the morning where I'm more consistent. And I think is if we can make a small commitment that's doable, make it an announcement, have someone hold us accountable, and it's better to do them short and easy rather than one big blast. And I'm going to do an hour every day. Like, who has time for that? And there were times I did an hour. Because I didn't commit to it, I felt like, well, I can do whatever I want, but I'm going to do it every single day. And that held me accountable.
That non-negotiable concept, right? That I am going to do this every day. I am not negotiating. I'm not listening to what my lizard brain is telling me or all the stressors that are happening around me. Can I just sit here and create a consistent plan, even if it's a micro version of a grand scheme plan, right? We all want to have a 90-minute morning routine where we can go through every single thing that Dr. Huberman and Robin Sharma and everybody who has these morning routines can put together for us. And we want to be able to do that. I think as great as the intentions are there, what is truly practical on a day-to-day life experience? Like for me, let's say, for example, I got back from Mexico yesterday. I took a red-eye flight wearing my blue blockers and just was completely out of it. I was so stressed about like getting myself home and getting back into my routine. And this morning I woke up probably 2 hours later than I normally do. And I had to get my kids going because the whole house woke up late. The Jays game was last night too, which was a whole nother reason. And the whole house woke up late. And what that did was it caused this stress of, okay, now we got to move. But then once I got them ready and out of the house and lunches together and everybody's making a move, then I sat and I did my work for a short period of time outside of what I normally do. So normally I'll have an hour routine in the morning. I wake up at 5:30, do my meditation, I do some breath work, I go to the gym, I do 45 minutes or so at the gym, and then I come home and then I'm on dad duty. This morning I didn't have that. And there was still a 10-minute window that I was able to take to do my breath work this morning to get myself recentered after I finished all of the getting the kids out of the house chaos.
Good
That
for you.
consistency is the key that you're kind of talking about here. And you did it through chronic pain. Like getting kids out of the house is one type of pain, but chronic body pain that is insidious and constant and not relenting in some capacity. Getting through that, I think, is so huge for people. So consistency is key. Consistency carves canyons. I love that.
I'm glad you mentioned breath work because I mean breath work too when I say meditation. I've done the Oxygen Advantage breathing coaching techniques and I'm certified in that. And I absolutely is one of the best things I've ever done. So it's part of my life. It's part of my routine. But I have to say breath work trumps everything. It's a type of meditation, right? If you're struggling with meditation, I think breath work is so much easier because you're focusing on the breath, you're counting, you're a little distracted. You don't have to, let your mind be empty. And I think it's really, really important that everyone learns how to breathe. And I learned functional breathing. I mean, there's so many other types of breath work out there. I learned what we should be doing the other 23 hours of the day after your yoga class to, what teaches you other breathing. So I don't I just incorporate it into my daily life. And I teach people how to do this because you don't need to carve out 10 minutes. You can do this type of breath work while you're driving the car or while you're standing in line at the supermarket. Instead of taking out your phone, like, why don't you just go, okay, I'm going to promise myself now until I reach the end of the line, I'm just going to breathe light, gentle, the type of functional breathing that I teach. And you're feeling instantaneously much calmer, more relaxed rather than seeing some horrifying news piece. and and that's what I'm so glad you taught about breathwork, because that has gotten me through so much. And it's not only mentally you're feeling more calm, but physically there's incredible changes that happen to the body as well.
We take the breath for granted so much. The breath is something that you can use. We do it 16 to 24,000 times a day. And it's really funny we're talking about breath now, because when I was in Mexico, just from this last trip, I was speaking on the topic of breath and the science of breath and oxygen advantage work. So we're very aligned, as you've probably figured out. The breath is incredibly overlooked, right? Like if you go and you tell your doctor that I'm doing breath work, they're like, cool, like doesn't mean anything to me generally. But we do this so much, and our bodies are so reliant on the input of breath as to what it's telling our body. And we take that for granted. And I think that is a huge thing that we should learn how to do more effectively. In fact, it's probably the single most important thing, because you can shift your mind through your breath into a state of meditation, or you can shift your body into a state of stress and reactivity. And it's your breath pattern, whether you're conscious or unconscious of it, that's going to determine which way you're going to go. And are we then going to turn on our vagus nerve and go into an inflammatory, controlled rest, recover state and actually enable healing to occur? Or are we going to push into a sympathetic state where inflammation is more prevalent and our body is going to break down more readily and we're just stuck in a stress mode? The breath is so huge for this, and it needs to stop being this thing that we overlook. It needs to be the basis and the lens through which we see and do everything. I think that's a huge piece of the puzzle. So I'm glad to hear that you were using breathwork.
It's a free tool.
It's the free tool.
It's free.
Like you have to do it. You can't live if you don't do it. So do it well, or learn to.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. Did you incorporate a lot of that into your Wolverine Protocol?
Yes, it's part of the Wolverine Protocol, breathing and meditation. I mean, again, whatever floats your boat. Like if you prefer meditation, fine. I'm just a huge fan of the breath, and actually no better time to get a surgery than when you've oxygenated your blood, right? Through breathwork techniques, because hemoglobin, which carries 98% of the oxygen in your blood, it will release it doing certain techniques. So we want more blood flow, we want more oxygen, and we can heal a lot faster. So yes, definitely part of the protocol.
I love it. So we've talked in the protocol specifically about the blood flow restriction piece that you utilize, the mindset piece that you've included. You've talked about the breath now. Were there any other very important pieces to the Wolverine Protocol that we've kind of missed out on?
Yeah, so we've covered the stress piece and sleep as well, and I think they kind of go hand in hand, stress and sleep. So whatever helps you sleep is so important. And no, it's hard when you're living with chronic pain. It is so hard. But you got to try to get your good sleep, because that's when regeneration happens. And so especially post-surgery, it's actually people who've had hip surgeries, they always say that, oh, it's painful, but it's much better pain than the other pain that I had. And then, of course, you know that every day gets better and better, whereas every day was getting worse and worse. So you have this sudden shift in your mind when you are, okay, you've had surgery, but people tell me, I'm so sorry you're doing surgery. I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to do surgery. There are people who don't get to do it, and I get to do it now because I have private insurance. Like there are people standing in line. I have a friend who's been waiting for years. And so I think it's a privilege. And again, this is a change in the mindset is you get to do this and you're going to be way better for it. So sleeping is a really big component. And so when you are post-surgery, that's when I'm like, bring on the sleep meds. I don't care. I don't know what drugs you're giving me, but I will take it because I don't want pain and I want to be able to sleep. This is the time to use these medications situations. I'm not reliant on these in any other situation, but I really knew that how sleep was very important. And there's a couple other tools that would help me as well that I'll mention in a sec.
I love that. Sleep is incredibly overlooked. You're speaking my language here. Like, I love this. I am so excited to share the Wolverine Protocol and at least these very important components with people that are suffering that need to know this information going into a surgery, or even if you've had it and it's time to come out of it. What are the few foundational pieces that you can just do consistently that will provide your body an opportunity to recover and regenerate more readily? And sleep, breath, mindset, literally, these are the same pieces that we talk about, even if you aren't having a surgery, but can you then supercharge them in a situation where surgical intervention is required? And the mindset around this is so huge. The mindset piece of experiencing the surgery as a privilege. God, what a huge shift that can just create, because then your mind is not telling your body that you have to fight the surgery. It's saying you get to stop being in pain. You get to stop experiencing this thing that's holding you back. Wow. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, you get a new life, and you do feel born again. And I still, to this day, it's been 1 year with one hip, 9 months with the other, and I still look at a flight of stairs and I just am so happy. I would never have thought that before. This is my pain to purpose story, is I also get to help people through this. But I took it for granted that I had 2 functioning legs. I took it for granted that I didn't have pain. And so I'm reminded by that. I still think about it every single day and how lucky I am. And I get to go to the gym, and I get to go for a walk, and I get to do these things that I was not able to have for a very long time. So yeah, hashtag gratitude.
Yeah, it sounds like wisdom, really. Like, you've experienced things, you've put your mind to it, and you've created this amazing shift, and you've enabled the surgery to enable you to live better, and you've given it a positive outlook. For a lot of people, I think that is a missing piece. So I'm really glad that you were able to do that.
Gratitude journal was also part of my protocol
love
as well.
that.
Because you're feeling so bad and sorry for yourself and negative, every morning broke out that journal. 3 things. What am I grateful for today? And you find them, and they do brighten up your day. This stuff works.
I love it. This is huge. I think this is such powerful information for people. Gratitude is a big piece. These are foundational tools that are supercharged in a protocol like the Wolverine Protocol. And it's about the consistency, I imagine. Would you say that the consistency is the biggest piece, that
Yes.
if you don't do the consistent work, you're not going to experience the positive results?
Well, you do your best is what I say, because some people are all or nothing mindset, and then, I can't do it all and I won't be consistent, so I won't do it. No, I mean, consistency is key. That's really, you'll see more benefits if you do, but you'll see benefits doing 1 minute of breathwork exercise with me right now, right? You will see something. So it's better to do something than nothing. So I encourage people, just do what you can. And again, this protocol I have is just so deep, and we've only touched on the surface. And I also have peptides that we can talk about as well, sort of post-surgery. But I've also want to share with you something that I think you'll appreciate in terms of stress, anxiety before surgery. And I told you before we started recording, I had some anxiety, and I'm not an anxious person whatsoever. It's just not in my DNA. I'm lucky to be that, but I know what it can feel like. I have most of the women I work with explain this to me. And several days before my surgery, I was waking up at 2 a.m, racing mind. Oh my God, someone's going to cut off my bone, open my leg. Is it going to hurt? What if I wake up in the middle of the surgery? Am I going to be traumatized for the rest of my life? And then I'm going to go need therapy for this? Stupid things. I couldn't sleep. And I knew how important it was to sleep, especially before the surgery. So this is probably what an insomniac feels like. So I actually had this neuroacoustic software called Newcom. And I said, I've been using this just kind of for meditation once in a while. I recommend it. People say it's great. And I remember waking up as well, and I had a tight chest. And I thought, oh, this is what an anxiety feels like. Like I feel a physical pain and my mind is racing. So I sent a message to this company and I said, I'm having this surgery. I don't know if this stuff is going to work for me. Should I do it or not? They were like, do it 3 times a day. So I did. And the day before the surgery, I had the best sleep of my life. I was so shocked. Because I hear people talk about that. I told you, so it's like a little bit of a cult thing. Like, I don't know, people go crazy for this stuff. The work sometimes and sometimes it doesn't. But the people who it works for, I was converted. I was like, oh my God, now I'm one of these cuckoos. But I felt the benefits immediately, and I felt relaxed, and I kept this on my head until they wheeled me in there. I wish I could have taken it with me. I think some people you would be able to, but for me, they said no. But what the crazy thing is that I went into the surgery totally relaxed. Like, and I told you, it's impressive when you see that Frankenstein table and it's like, that's for me and they're going to cut me open. But I was so chill. I don't know if it's because they didn't give me anything. I took nothing. I was just, maybe it's the new com. I don't know. And so I went on and then they put me out and then I hear a saw. Bzzz, and I'm like, oh my, am I awake? Like I could, you're drugged up. I was like, I don't know. And then I heard this. They were pounding something and I could feel my leg moving each time. And I thought, oh, I think I'm awake. Like, I was confused. Is this a dream? Is it not? Because you're so drugged up. And I started to mumble because I tried to say, like, I shouldn't be awake or something because my worst nightmare came true. My worst nightmare, this is what happened. So the next day I saw this doctor and I said, did I wake up? And he said, yeah, we put you right out. And I remember feeling the cold drugs going through my arms because when I mumbled something. And I thought, this is crazy. And I wasn't traumatized at all. And because they give you so much sedative. I don't remember the name of the drug, but it's to forget, right?
Okay.
Have a surgery, like the anesthesia I wasn't totally out. I was just sedated heavily. And so I kept doing new comms. Like I just kept doing it. Only recently I stopped doing it. This is like a year later, but I just got it again. It started to become a habit. So post-surgery, you're not sleeping really well, right? You're still waking up in pain. You pop painkillers and you're just in and out. So every time I woke up in the middle of the night, I would put on this new calm. And I would try to also, there's a track called Rescue and they say it's, I don't know, like 3 hours of deep sleep in 30 minutes. I don't know. But I was like, I'm just going to do it. and I feel better. I just like kind of became dependent a little bit on this thing, but it certainly helped me through. And so I think I was calm and relaxed when the wake up of the surgery because of the drugs. I highly doubt it was the neuroacoustic software. Maybe it played a role. I don't know. But what happened is with the second surgery, it happened again. I was like, I can't believe I woke up again.
Wow.
Yeah. But this time I wanted to stay awake because I was curious. Once I knew I wouldn't have to have therapy for the rest of my life and I was okay with it. I was curious and I wanted to stay awake, but they still put me out when they saw me and whatever.
That is very interesting. It's kind of cool to hear, as terrible and terrifying as it would be to experience. You're waking up and you're like, the thing that I thought was going to happen just happened, but I'm here and I'm experiencing it, but you're experiencing it very objectively. You weren't experiencing it with fear and emotion and negative energy surrounding the idea that it happened. It was just an awareness. And I think that was trained into you through the new calm, through the sleep practices, through the stress management, through the breath work. You train your body to experience such a terrifying experience, something that you had thought about thousands of times before the surgery, and you were okay.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head. I didn't think about it that way, but you're probably right. All this practice I'd done for years came to be tested, and it worked.
And what that goes to show us is that even your worst fear isn't really that bad, because you can train your mind, you can train your brain to go through it and just experience it objectively. And maybe we just make a bigger thing out of it and we tell ourselves this greater story than truly what is happening here. that for me is very profound, because it means that we are malleable. It means that our brains are changeable in such a way that we can show up in this experience that we've been fearful of for such a long time and be okay.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. I'm going to use this story. It's beautiful. I think you're absolutely right. I didn't really think about it like that, but I think you're right.
I think that's so cool. And I want people to take this as empowerment, and just to realize that really what's happening around us is what we're experiencing, and we can experience it however we want, because we can train our minds to experience it in a more objective manner, to experience it with more cognitive function and cognitive executive supportive function, rather than it be this fearful story that we've trained our bodies to go through. And that is empowering, because it means that we get to choose
It
how
is
we go through
empowering.
it.
Yeah, we get to choose. You're right. And I think the more we practice, like I told you, I told my kids, start with muscle mass when you're young. It's the same thing. Start with your brain training, start with your mental health, start with the nervous system regulation. Just do it. Even if you don't feel like you need it, right?
Yeah,
I didn't need this years before, but I heard it was good for me, so I did it. And
exactly.
now when I really needed it, it was there for me.
It was there for you because you trained it into you, and that was long-term prehab.
Yes.
I love that. That's so cool. Okay. Well, your Wolverine protocol worked really well for you. And I love that you've created this thing. I would be honored to share it with the audience. So send me the links. We'll put it into the show notes. So for anybody who wants to know more about it, get to the depth of the Wolverine protocol, check out the show notes. Zora will share that with us, and we'll have it out for all of you. But follow her as well. I think there's a lot of great info that comes out of your Instagram and your online presence. And I want to give you a chance to kind of lean on any final thoughts here. How do we tie this into a bow, and explain how we can use things like the Wolverine protocol, which are a wonderful compilation of foundational pieces to experience a healthier, happier health span and hack happiness and health into our lives?
That's a good question. Good way to round this out is I always tell people to treat yourself like a 5-year-old, right? We wouldn't let your 5-year-old stay up all night on their phone or scroll through Instagram nonstop, or eat the wrong things, or just have a glass of wine and cheese and you're done. I mean, it again depends on your goals, but if you really want to live a long, happy life, and it's not just about the goal, your 80-year-old self, it's the whole journey, right? We want to feel good today. Then we need to take care of ourselves, even when nothing's wrong. And this is what, I was motivated by the death of my mother, unfortunately, but that's the way it worked for me. So I've been doing this for decades now, but it's never too late. You're never too old. You're never too late to start getting healthy, and you will have massive benefits. In fact, the worse condition you are, the more incremental that those benefits happen. You'll see them happen. So I would say the protocols are overwhelming, like you mentioned, like the morning routines and all this. You just start with one step. I think we've heard this so many times. And it's that all or nothing mindset that really kills you. So please let that go. Learn how to let go and say, every day is a new day. I'm going to add one thing to my list of things that will protect my 80-year-old self and treat myself as a 5-year-old. So start whatever feels most comfortable with you. Again, there's no right or wrong and where to start, but I think we've covered some of the most important points. And this is the foundation of biohacking. And so if you can just get started today, life happens. Life will happen. Life will throw you lemons. You don't get to 100 years old without any death, divorce, tragedies, things happening, disease, like all the Ds. They happen. Okay. And that's just part of life. But when you are more resilient, when you do these practices, even if it's just a little breath work for 2 minutes, you will become more and more resilient. And then when you are tested, you will be ready for it.
I really couldn't have said it better myself. I love this episode. I think there's going to be so much positive that comes out of this. People are going to learn and be able to implement things very easily and be empowered to be able to build that resilience right off the bat. Resilience is the key here for all of us. That's the ultimate underlying goal here is, can we teach your body to recover, bounce back as quickly as possible? Because you're not going to live a life without stress. A life without stress is not life. So how do you teach your body to handle all the stressors? Shift your mindset about those stressors as not being all the time just being negative stress, that it's teaching you something, that you've only gotten to the point where you are, or you've been able to benefit because you experienced something negative or something that was challenging in the past, and be as objective as possible. So this is huge. I would love for everybody to follow you. Where can they learn a little bit more about you and your work and follow you?
Hackmyage.com is where all my social media lies. It's always Hack My Age, if you can remember that. If you can't remember that, Zora the Explorer. Right, that's a name given to me a long time ago by one of my followers. And if you Google it, you'll find me, and it's easy to remember.
I love that. I have an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, and so it really hits me hard. I love it. This was great. Zora, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your wonderful story and your protocol and just your wisdom with us. This has been a great episode. I'm honored to have had you on and to share your work with everyone.
Oh, thank you so much. And I love what you're doing. Keep doing. It's so important, your work. So thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. If you got to this point in the episode, thank you so much for listening. I hope you got a lot out of this. I know I learned a ton, and I'm very excited to share this one with all of you. We'll catch you all on the next one.